Welcome to the 10th episode of All Things Crypto, an Elk Finance podcast. I'm Shiloh, also known as LT Snake Plissken.
And I am Fareed.
So today we're discussing OHM forks, otherwise known as free-floating reserve currencies. If you're unfamiliar with that, Olympus DAO is an example.
Please keep in mind, we are not financial advisors, and this is not a financial advice. If you're looking for financial advice, please find a licensed advisor in your area. Our mission is here to inform you about the crypto world, and we are not providing any advice here.
Right. So going forward from that, let's discuss a little bit about OHMs.
Absolutely. Before that, I should say that the 10th episode, holy.
Yeah,
it
right?
has been a long
10?
journey.
Yeah, that 10 is one higher than 9.
Is it?
Yeah, that's some math for you.
You know your math.
You can take that as advice.
Absolutely. So let's go at it. What is an OHM fork? You know, what the heck is OHM and what the heck is fork?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I know it sounds like one thing has to do with electricity and the other is something you eat with.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
It's just like a kid put that name together and call it Cricket.
That's
Fine.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. So, an OHM fork, OHM, is the token name, the token symbol for Olympus DAO. Now, you might have heard of them, you might have not. They really quickly climbed the market cap charts and are kind of up there now. So they're kind of a unique type of cryptocurrency just because of how they work. Now, when we say fork, we mean something that is cloned from something else. Basically, with any cryptocurrency, you can take that what's called a smart contract, which we've kind of discussed before, especially in our first episode. And you can actually see all that code on the blockchain, on using a blockchain explorer. Like a great example would be Etherscan. So using Etherscan.io, for example, you could go to the code section of any token using the contract address and see the contract and copy it and just launch your own if you want. With some modifications, or even not. It actually doesn't matter. So that's what's happened. A lot of Olympus DAO clones. Now, Olympus launched on the Ethereum network in February 2021. And they kind of had a unique idea. So what if each token that was created was actually backed by one stablecoin? And in that case, it was DAI. Now, they want it to kind of hold its purchasing power regardless of how volatile the market is. No matter what, the idea was it was going to be backed. Now, where it differs from something like a stablecoin is they actually don't bring it back down really when it goes above the value of, let's say, $1. They just let it kind of keep going. Now, that's where the name, like, free floating reserve currency. It's up to the market as to where that currency floats when above that dollar mark. And so Olympus DAO, after they launched, they became really successful. It really climbed the charts, especially through the bull market in early 2021. So, of course, we've got a lot of different projects that took that code and used it and moved it off the Ethereum network. Right? So we've got some of these forks that are present on chains with cheaper gas, which I'm a bigger fan of. Like if you look at, Phantom, so a little bit of a pun there. They're on the Phantom network, and that's Phantom as in OHM. So they're on there. It's cheaper for gas to do transactions, those sort of things. And they changed up the formula a bit, but it's basically the same thing. Another one that's going to be launching, for example, is Stag. and they're going to be building a free floating reserve currency on top of liquidity in the elk decks. So that's going to be pretty cool, because the mission there is to provide more of a reserve for elk tokens, so that people can buy larger amounts. That way, kind of encouraging more big buy activity, because that's one thing elk has kind of struggled with, at least this in 2021, is having, we're pretty small, so having that ability for people to buy a large amount, which I think will help with our cross-chain function. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of what in basic terms an ohm fork is. If you're still confused, don't worry, we're gonna get really into how these work.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So the DAO, what is that, and how does that relate to?
Right. So when Olympus DAO launched, they launched as a decentralized, autonomous organization. And honestly, I think DAOs are actually worth their own episode in the future. So the idea is anyone who basically stakes their own token in the protocol can take that staked. You basically get another token to represent your staked ohm. So it'd be called, let's say, S-ohm, so SOHM. And then again, you can take that, wrap it again, stake it again for G-ohm, GOHM, which is their governance token. And long explanation, simple, really. You can get ohm, and the more of this you wrap and hold, you get a vote. And the vote and the impact is dependent on how much you have. That's your voting power. Think of a traditional board of directors and some shareholders, where somebody with 51% of the company could basically pass any motion.
But that is kind of interesting, though, because when you said autonomous, I had the impression that it is controlled by a protocol and nobody can mess with that. But now it is kind of interesting that you're saying that, if I have more, I can have more voting power.
Right. And so I oversimplified it by saying 51%. Different protocols and different DAOs will work differently. So you might actually, certain proposals might require 75% agreements. So 75% of the token holders who vote on the proposal might have to vote yes for something to pass, let's say. So that prevents everybody ganging up and making a choice. And of course, you could submit. You wouldn't necessarily be able to submit any proposal you want and have it voted on, right? Of course, it would have to make sense and be logical and have some community support to even get up there. So to kind of weed out some nefarious actors.
But that would be very interesting to see how it's going to play out, though, because these are really relatively new concepts.
Yes.
And are we at major decision points? I don't know personally, but I think, that could potentially become the point of weakness in the future.
You never know. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's all in how it's played, and having an informed investor is going to be your best weapon against those bad decisions too.
Fair enough.
Right? So generally the idea is, if they hold more of the token, they're going to want to know more about it, and they're going to be more willing to invest in things that are beneficial for the protocol.
Fair enough.
Right? So, and of course, even the little guy gets a say. And if a lot of little guys, vote and connect their wallet and sign the transaction to vote, they can make a big difference. So
that's true. Yeah, it has quite a bit of similarity with the way we are governing the companies in these days. So yeah, I see your point.
Yeah.
The other question I have, Charlotte, is how do you create return on these investments?
Yeah, so with an ohm fork, and with ohm itself, Olympus DAO itself, there's basically two routes to kind of make a profit, and those main things are staking and bonding. Now, with staking, the idea is that you take your token and you, just like we've talked about in previous episodes, and you put it in a pool, and all of the tokens in a pool get a certain APR.
Okay.
Which means they basically get more of the token that has not yet been that gets minted and given to them. So it's created. Mm-hmm. Now the difference with OHM forks here, these free floating reserve currencies, is they don't have a cap on tokens. Like, for example, if we look at ELK, there's a 42 million token cap. Now these OHM tokens are always inflationary, means they can be minted forever. And of course, the rate at which they're minted is controlled by a smart contract. So somebody can't go in there and just mint all of them, and unless they find it some sort of exploit. But usually, these are audited, and the ones that make it are audited. And kind of we see it that way. So staking happens, and the craziest part is if you go look on some of these staking sites, what you're going to see is these insane APRs.
Yeah, they are. It's really hard to believe that they can be that high. Some of them are talking about hundreds of thousands of % per year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that is the kind of that too good to be true point. And when we look at those large ROIs, return on investment percents, those APRs, they're so high because your return is actually not based on how much money or how many stable coins you invested into the project. They're actually based on how much of the token you're going to earn.
And that is a really good point, because all of us, we typically think about the dollars or tokens, but that is a very interesting and important distinction, actually.
Yes, absolutely. So of course, a lot of them have this kind of, this crystal ball kind of feature where you can go on there and it shows you, if the token stayed at this same price, how much money you'd have after 3 months. And it's ridiculous. Like it's such a gimmick.
It is like, I don't know, massive exponential crazy number. And in the first glance, you're just like, yeah, you know what? If I put my tokens here, maybe I don't need to work for the rest of my life anymore.
Exactly. So, yeah. So the idea there is a little tricky, but what's happened is a lot of people kind of know this about ohms, and they look at that and they're like, oh yeah, that's an ohm fork. They do this. But I mean, it right away seems too good to be true, and to some degree it is, unless it grows forever at the same rate.
It should be ever expanding system. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting, because when you're looking at bigger ones such as Olympus versus the smaller ones, you can totally see that the rate of return for the bigger ones is kind of started going down quite a bit.
Right.
To be exact, it's like 3 order of magnitude or 2 order of magnitude.
Yes.
So you can totally see that, actually.
Yeah, and if you look at like Olympus DAO, for example, and the returns there are maybe 1,000% last time I looked. 2,000%, something like that, which sounds crazy. Still, not necessarily, But then if you look at something like Phantom,
that was like 379,000%.
No, I think it was 500,000.
Oh man!
so like it's hard to say that that's going to be sustainable, right?
I would love to say that to my dad. Dad, I'm making 500,000% per year.
Yes, yeah.
I think he's gonna just laugh at me.
Right. If you make 500,000% of the token, yeah, you can earn all the token you want. But if it's ends up not being worth anything, you have a lot of tokens that aren't worth anything.
That's true. 100% of nothing is still nothing.
Yeah, but there's a lot.
We are not saying it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, though, a lot of people have made a lot of profit off of these these own forks. So I think it's worth looking at, worth knowing about, and always do your own research. Listen to this podcast, read some articles. We're going to have a Medium article coming out about ohms and specifically stag, and getting in at the right time and being responsible and not getting greedy are going to be very important here. Now that's staking. So staking with those high percentage APRs, that's how that works. Now, the second way you can create a return on your investment is bonds.
Okay.
Now with bonds, it works a little bit differently. So bonds are how the reserve currency quote unquote backs its treasury. Now it's kind of interesting because the treasury does hold value, so there is technical available backing for these tokens, and you can actually look on whatever project site, and if they're legitimate, you can you look and see about how much backing there is for each token created. Now, are they going to use that to liquefy those things in the treasury in order to catch the price up? Probably not. Right? But you can see that those do exist. So you can what a bond is here, back to that, is a certain asset that is accepted by the treasury.
Okay.
Now, bonds can come in a few different forms. Now, originally when Olympus DAO started, they only took DAI, which is a US stablecoin. So you could buy it on the open market on, let's say, Uniswap, or you could go in and buy it with DAI and receive your OHM over time, maybe 5 days or so. And on a linear scale, but you'd get maybe 5 or 10% discount with a bond. So, of course, then this began to evolve, and because you can actually trade liquidity pool tokens. Now, if you want to know what those are, head back to our episode on liquidity. But basically, quick summary: when you provide 2 tokens to a decentralized exchange, people borrow those and trade between them when they buy and sell, and you get a percentage of the return, usually 0.25% of each transaction between that pair. Now, so if I make, let's say, elk and DAI liquidity, I put those both in the pool, lend them for people. Let's use stag as an example. Would probably take elk DAI LP. Now, when I put that elk and DAI in the liquidity pool, I get a receipt, and those receipt tokens are what are called LP tokens, and it helps keep track of how much you have lent to the pool. Just like if I stake with one of these ohms, I get S ohm, to keep in my wallet, and it keeps track of how much actual ohm I've got staked. And same thing with LP. I've got elk and DAI LP, and now the thing is with these bonds, I can actually sell my elk DAI LP to let's say when stag comes out, I can sell it to stag, and I can get a discount, maybe a 5%, 10% discount. And by giving them my LP, so I can actually get more of the ohm, or in that case, stag. Now, the tricky part here is it's kind of up to you to do your own research and know a little bit about the market.
But do you mind if I stop you here and ask a question? Why would I buy a bond versus a stake?
Right. So that's important. That's a good question. Because when you buy with a bond versus going to buy the token right on an open DEX, the biggest thing for me here is a bond has no price impact. Now, So, price impact, that is when you buy a large amount of something. What that's going to do is it automatically creates buy pressure when you buy something, or sell pressure when you sell it.
That's right.
So if I buy too much compared to the amount of liquidity available, there's not as much to buy. It gets more scarce. So it goes up in price in the pool, right? If I just buy it on, let's say, the elk decks, right? And let's say there's $1,000 of dye and $1,000 worth of elk, and I want to buy $500 worth of this elk with my dye. It's gonna be a huge price impact.
That's right.
Because I would be taking half of the pool, and it's got to make adjustments.
So you're telling me that in the case of a bond is a pre-allocated number which has really nothing to do with the liquidity pool we have.
Exactly.
So as a result, you can't really change the basically price by a big purchase.
Exactly. And you get it at a discount.
Okay.
And the funny thing here with a bond is it works the opposite way you would think. You'd think if a bunch of people were buying this stuff with bonds, that it would be less and less of a discount, right?
Yeah.
When more people are doing it, you get less.
That's
right.
The
funny thing is with these, the more people who are using bonds to buy the currency, the bigger the discount.
That's right.
Which is funny because so if we all buy with elk, we buy stag with elk dye LP, and we all start doing that, there's actually going to be a bigger discount on stag when buying with elk dye LP, which is going to be kind of interesting. So the idea is, right, you're gonna buy that, you're gonna get that discount, but the thing is, you get that token over a specific period of time. It's what's called vested.
Okay.
So you get a certain percentage every equal that's kind of distributed to you to claim over 5 days. So after 5 days, you can claim that whole amount that you bought. So the risk here with a bond is you're hoping that the token doesn't decrease in value for more than you got the discount for.
Correct.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah, the worst case, you break even.
Exactly. So you're hoping that, and as it unlocks, so it's based on time. So as it unlocks, you can claim a little more, and you can stake that amount in the staking, just like we had kind of talked about before. So you're hoping by doing that, having bought with bonds and staking what does come out, you have to take a really active role in doing it.
That's right.
But it allows you a little bit greater control. But you have to pay attention. So ideally, this can be profitable if the right conditions are met.
Absolutely. That is really fascinating because in the first glance, it's just like you should be out of your mind to buy bonds because the APYs are massive on the staking side.
Right.
But I totally see the point here.
Yes.
There is another thing which, when you go to the websites of, for instance, Olympus, you see, is the rebasing concept. Would you mind going through that and telling us what that means?
Right. So the rebase basically means a distribution of tokens. So instead of, like we talked about vesting earlier, right? When I give a bond, I just get equal amounts of the token until I've got it all. The funny thing is with rebasing, it'll be a set time where in a lump sum, you get a certain percentage. So let's say I stake...
is it hours? Is it days?
Yeah,
is it
hours.
months?
Yes.
Hours.
So sometimes a lot of them, 7 hours or something. Every 7 hours, there's a rebase, let's say. And so that means everybody in that pool through that time gets, 0.6% of their entire investment in tokens, right? So that compounds. It really compounds. So you can see where those huge APYs come in, like 560,000. Yeah, because you're getting 0.6 extra of your investment every 7 hours, and you don't have to re-put it in yourself. It auto compounds when you're staked. So
That is really impressive, because I don't know, 3 times, depends on rebasing, but 3 times a day, 4 times a day, depends on the day, 365 days. It's just like you can totally see it just like peaks
exponential.
and it goes up really quickly.
Yes.
But the question comes up, and you touched on it, but I think I have to ask that question for more clarification. So I understand that, what we have this compounding there, but is that too good to be true?
Yeah, well, I mean, the old saying, right? If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And are these APRs, APYs, ROIs, return on investments, are they sustainable? No way. Like, no. But it should be said that these still can be profitable if played right. They're very risky. Absolutely. We're talking about crypto. Very, very little is safe here. So the idea isn't that you're going to make 560,000% a year. Like, if you go into it with that, please don't actually just, like, you're banned from crypto. No more for you. Because greed will get you. But the idea here is investing at the right time so that you can keep ahead of the inflation of the token. So you're not going to be expecting 560,000% APYs. It might be reasonable to say, hey, maybe I'll double my investment, right? In terms of a dollar value. Because this can't go on forever. It's going to get infinitely more expensive. And as we know, we look at Olympus DAO, it's a little further ahead than these smaller ohm forks. And what we see is the rewards do tend to reduce, and it becomes a little bit more sustainable. So, and that only came out in February, so it's not even a year old. But remember that those APYs, those ROIs, those APRs are all based on the amount of token you will have, not how much the token is worth. And it's if they stayed constant for a year. So get in there, possibly go in with a goal, right? Mm-hmm. Set an amount and stick to it. Don't get greedy, right? So pay attention to the APYs. They're kind of fun. It's kind of one of those characteristics of ohms, but they're made to get people, really interested and draw them in. And, if you're getting in there, just waiting, holding out for your 560,000%, you're not going to get it.
Okay. You're telling me that, the same as any other investment. You have to do your research and figure out what you're getting into and understand that big rewards, they mean that you're taking a huge risk on it.
Huge risk, yes.
But the other question comes to my mind is these projects, they're all talking about it's kind of a stable pricing, but is it? Can they manage to sustain the prices there?
Yeah, they talk about it, and it's funny because they're talking about
because reserve currency is always about the stability that I can count on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe that was the original aim. Maybe they didn't know it was going to happen. To say every crypto project knows what they're doing, right? Especially initially. It's pretty all over the place, right? So the idea is, when the market cap drops, they can use some of the currency that they've minted for the organization themselves. Let's say, remember that rebase we were talking about when we were staking? Let's say 90% of that goes back to the people who are staked. Another perhaps 10%, depending on the protocol, would then be, held by the project themselves. And when the market cap drops, when things go down, they could then, use that and, let's say, burn it.
That's right.
Yeah. They could also buy back some of the token with money that the project has made and burn it that way too. Thus, upping the market cap and ideally the price of each token compared to what it was at that time.
So you're telling me that there are protocols to do buybacks and burning the tokens, to be able to sustain the price. But it's kind of interesting. We are not really seeing that. I mean, the numbers are all over the place.
Right.
And maybe, I don't know, I don't understand it properly.
Well, maybe it'll get to a point where it does regulate itself, and it gets to a point, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of an experiment.
It is.
And but what we do know is that of course, this can't last forever, unless we have every single person, and your grandma is talking about Olympus Dow, and she's putting her money in there. Well, at that point, it might be time to get out.
That's
true. Yeah.
You mentioned something about a stag. I just want to kind of know, what does that mean to us as elk folks? And what is the difference? How is it different in a stag compared to the others?
So the cool part is elk at the time of recording is on 16 different chains, right? And one of the things, of course, that elk is doing, one of our main missions is being a value transfer protocol where you can, have elk on one chain, send it to another, buy it on one, send it to another, without having to go through a centralized exchange, and basically being able to buy any token on eventually any chain, because our aim is to launch on any chain that people are on, right? Mm-hmm. But the one problem that gets in the way sometimes is the amount of liquidity, especially on smaller chains.
Okay.
The cool thing that Stag can do for us is they can, by taking bonds, remember we talked about those bonds, giving specific liquidity pool tokens, to Stag to buy the Stag, gets held, forever in a reserve. Now, when those LP tokens get held forever, a few things happen, right? The more and more LP that gets locked in there, it's locked, right? So that means that's permanently lent to our decentralized exchange, to the elk dex at app.elk.finance, right? So because it's locked away, it means a more permanent solution for big buys and sells, right?
That's right.
So we could get whales buying more. We could get people really making those big purchases if Stag gets off the ground and is absolutely very profitable and people are interested. It's going to be good for Stag. It's going to be good for us, and it'll allow for those big buys.
So there's quite a bit of synergy.
Absolutely. And if we can get that launched on multiple chains, ideally all the chains we're on, if Stag launches on all of those, if the guys decide to do that, and that means that they have immediate access to all of those chains, because that's our dex is everywhere, and I think it could be really, really helpful.
That is very interesting. Actually, that is very exciting, because at first when we were talking about the Stag, I was not really sure how that could add value. I know I'm putting you on a spot here, Shiloh, but I'm dying to ask this question. Is this a Ponzi scheme?
Well, I mean,
you don't need to, if you feel uncomfortable answering that. I totally understand, but
well, I mean, our thing here is to be honest, right? And I don't necessarily think it's perfectly defined as like a Ponzi scheme in terms of a pyramid. Though there's some of those characteristics, right? If you get in early, you get in right before, and the thing is successful. If the own fork is successful, then you're going to have, a probably decent profit, like really good, right? And it's interesting when they get big enough, at least for some of the major ohms that I know of, like Olympus or Phantom or even Templar Finance, and hopefully Stag, if they get big enough, they seem to somewhat sustain, at least for now. Though given the own forks, these free reserve currencies only date back to what is that, February 2021?
Yeah.
So it's
not even 1 year old.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't actually know how it ends. But what we do know is that there's really no realistic way that these APYs are sustainable forever unless people keep buying, right? So of course, too, as the size of the pool gets really, really big, the rewards decrease. These rebase percentages, the staking percentage that you get back is decreased. Now, if we look at, let's say Phantom, that's sitting at maybe $35 million market cap versus Olympus, which is $1.5 billion?
Yeah, that was
something
in
like that.
order. Yeah.
If you look at that, that's a huge market cap already. 1.5 billion, was it 2 billion? So I mean, it would have to keep going up and up and up and up. I mean, there's certainly room, right? It could happen. It kind of mimics a pyramid in that way, right? Where getting in at the bottom is going to be best. But really, the differences are that you can actually sell anytime you would want to. And even midway through, you don't necessarily have to be early to make a profit. And that's usually a pyramid scheme. If you got to be a Ponzi scheme, you got to be early, and you got to, you got to get in early, make money off of everyone else, and then kind of sell. But you can still get in, and I've seen those dips and looked at the charts. You can get in at one point and sell at another. So if you are willing to take the risk to get into an OHM, because they can be profitable, make sure you get in during a dip, and make sure that you don't get greedy. If you get greedy, you get impulsive, you're scared, you're kind of losing things, it can backfire.
That's right. So it goes back to the old school of thinking. Buy fear,
yeah,
and sell greed.
Yes, yeah, ideally, and not financial advice again. But
right, that was a good one.
That's right.
Yes.
So, yeah, and it's going to be more risky than even typical cryptos. So, keep it in mind. And also, we don't know what the end of a successful OHM looks like, or if in the end it can be, success. But we certainly have seen people make quite a bit of profit on it, and there's a reason that people are forking, creating their own OHMs, right? Because there is traction and there is interest. So as long as the market is interested, and you can get in and out when you need to get in and out, there's obviously potential profit to be made, but you're basically going to bet on getting in before the end, right?
Yeah, no, that's I think that was a pretty reasonable answer, and it goes back to again any other pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
that you have to time it, and you have to know when you're getting in and when you're getting out.
Yeah, but like you look at traditional pyramid schemes, it's usually the people who buy in, like especially when you hear about it on Facebook, they'll rarely make a profit.
Are you serious?
Really?
What
yeah.
Amway.
Yeah.
The lady who told me I was talking to, she said that I'm going to be rich.
Yeah, yeah. And but that's the thing. Like chances are, like there's like a 95% chance you're not going to make money on something like that. Whereas if you buy an OHM fork and it's legitimate, even if it's midway through, it's possible you got more than a 5% chance of making a profit, especially if you know when to kind of sell and when to buy, right? So you can still time it. So I guess that it's pretty risky. So I guess time will tell as to what that looks like. But what I am excited for is Stag. And the guys seem to really know what they're doing, and I love that it has a function of deepening our liquidity pools. So I mean I'm really looking forward to something they produce, and I think I always like things with a function.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they've got a purpose, and sometimes that's different than something that is just to be.
Absolutely. I would love to, maybe a year down the road, if you have this podcast next year, looking back and see where we are at a year after, because it's definitely a very active market and there are a lot happening out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens to an ohm in a bear market. I mean, I can kind of guess, but it'd be interesting to see. Not that I want to see a bear market. Maybe I should knock on wood, but fortunately, I'm not superstitious, so I won't do it.
With that, we bring this episode to end. I thank all the people who are part of our community and listening to us, and we will talk to you in the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've gotten any comments, please reach out on the Elks Telegram. That's t.me/elk_finance_chat, and you can DM me directly at LTSnakePliskin. And remember, if you're on there, we will never DM you. Do not respond. If anyone messages you out of nowhere and claims to be from the Elk team, they're definitely a scammer. So just be careful out there. And we'll see you for episode 11.
Have a good one.